Right, welcome to the first of our science working from home videos. We're moving on to a new topic now, which is biology, biodiversity, the living world. And what we're going to start with is classifying organisms. Okay? Now we need to know what both of those words mean. Okay? Classifying, that's just a fancy science way of saying we're going to split them up into different groups or different sets that all have something in common. Like if you go into the shop to buy things, things are normally in shelves or in certain places based on what they're like. You might find all the bread in one place. You'll find all the cheese in one place, all the crisps in another place. That's because they've all been classified to be similar to each other. And that's what we're going to learn to do with organisms. And that might be another new word for us here, okay? And an organism is basically anything alive, okay? So any living thing is an organism, okay? So like trees, my beautiful drawing of a bird there, butterflies, sheep, flowers, these are all organisms, okay? But we should come up with an actual definition for it, okay? So what we're going to say is, let's double check, we can see that, yes. An organism is any individual living, and that's the really important part, okay? Organisms are all living. Any individual living thing. Could get a bit more complicated than that, but that's good enough for us now to stick with. Okay? But as you can imagine, there's a lot of living things, okay? Even just now, sitting there listening to this, you can probably start to name tens, hundreds of them and just keep going. So we need to classify them. We need to split them up into groups so we can say, oh, we're just talking about these ones, or we're just talking about those ones, okay? And that's what this whole idea of classifying organisms is about. So, if we take all the organisms to be all the living things, we want to split these up, okay? Now, there are 5 main groups we can split organisms into, okay? There's only 2 we're really going to focus on here. Okay, so we can split organisms up into groups here. We will have some others over here on the side. We're not going to talk about those, okay? The main ones we'll talk about will be animals and plants. Okay? So, ignoring all the other types, the confusing types like bacteria and fungus and things like that, our main 2 types of organisms are animals or plants. Straight away we can say, okay, a bird, that's an animal. A tree, that's a plant. Clover, that's a plant. Butterfly is an animal. A sheep is an animal. Flower is a plant. Okay? So we're already doing this categorizing without even really thinking about it. Okay? But it tells us a lot about it. For example, just splitting things into animals and plants tells us a little bit about it. We know animals can think, can control what they do, are conscious, and we know that plants aren't. Okay? And so maybe if we split them up into even more categories, we could learn more about them. Okay? And that's what this is all about. Seeing what different categories, what different classes, what different groups we can split organisms into. So for the time being, we're going to ignore plants. Okay? We'll look at plants in another video. At the moment, we want to be focusing on just the animals. Okay? Now, there are thousands of different types of animals, so we're going to have to split it up again. Okay? So, we'll split it up into 2 main types of animals. Okay? We will have... Now, these words might be new to you. You might have heard them before, but we will go over them, don't worry. We've got these 2 main types of animals, and these are something we call vertebrates. That's Vertebrates. Don't worry, there is a PowerPoint to go along with this as well, so if you can't read them, it's not a big deal. And then we have the opposite, okay? So we've got vertebrates, and then we have something called invertebrates. Invertebrates. And don't worry if you struggle to spell it, because as you can see, it takes me a wee while to remember as well. Okay. Have a wee second. See if you actually know what these mean. Okay. Pause it if you want. Have a little think. Okay, so difference between vertebrates and invertebrates is all in basically how the animal is built. Okay. Vertebrates all have something, and invertebrates don't have it. Okay. And that's what sets them apart. Okay. So vertebrates, they all have a backbone, okay? So they have a spine. They have some sort of bone or skeleton going down their back to protect all the nerves and everything in it. And the invertebrates, they have no backbone. Okay, so they've got no spine. These, again, we're going to come back to later, okay? But these are animals like spiders, bugs, insects, the butterfly from up there. Those don't have backbone, so they're invertebrates, okay? But the first one we're going to focus on are the vertebrates, okay? Because that's, well, the nicer animals. Honestly, I don't like spiders and things, so I prefer the vertebrates, okay? Now, we're vertebrates. We all have backbones, okay? And most of the animals we deal with on a day-to-day basis are vertebrates. Cats and dogs are vertebrates. Rabbits, sheep, cows are vertebrates. Birds are vertebrates. Fish are vertebrates, okay? Lots of the animals we see all the time are vertebrates. And what they all have in common are that they have a skeleton and they have a backbone inside their body to protect their nerves. But we said we were splitting these up into different groups that were like each other, okay? So that's why we went animals and plants, because animals are sort of like each other and plants are like each other, okay? And then we split the animals up and we've said, well, vertebrates are all like each other because they have backbones, and invertebrates are all like each other because they don't. But then the examples I gave of vertebrates, of saying, okay, fish, birds, cats, dogs, they're not like each other though, are they? Birds are quite different to fish, okay? Cats are very different to snakes, okay? And so we need to split this up again, okay? And that means we're getting some more classes, okay? And so these vertebrates, they can be split up into another 5 categories. Okay, so 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. And these 5 categories of vertebrates, you might already know some of these words. This might be where we get to words we already know, okay? So, one of these categories is mammals. Another one is birds. Then we have reptiles. Then we have amphibians. Oh, I'm going to struggle to fit this all in. Amphibians. And then we have fish. So, once we get down to the point of thinking about vertebrates, that's all the animals with backbones, we have 5 different types of them. Okay? And now we can start to see things that are a bit more like each other. All the birds are sort of the same. All the reptiles are very similar to each other. All the fish are quite similar. Okay? And this is where we get our main categories, the ones we're more familiar with. Okay? Now, hopefully we already know something about each of these categories. Okay, and that's going to be part of the homework, is you writing down some things about the categories, okay? But we'll have a little bit of a chat about them now, and I'll do some more very bad cartoon drawings of animals. So wish me luck here. So, mammals. It's the one we're probably most familiar with. Okay, mammals are things like cats, dogs, horses, elephants, whales. Okay, so quite often these animals will have fur. Sometimes though they'll have skin like a whale, okay, or hair. Okay, but what they all have in common is that they're all warm-blooded, like us. We're mammals as well, and they all feed their young off of milk. Okay. And they give birth to live young. They don't lay eggs or anything like that, okay? Mammals have babies that are already alive and start feeding them milk and are warm-blooded. So, example of an animal, an example of a mammal, we've got sheep. Now, I know some of you do have sheep, so I'm very sorry about my drawing of one, but sheep, okay. Now, birds. We know what birds are. We know what they have in common. Normally they can fly. Not always, but normally. They've got feathers. They're very, very light. Okay, they have beaks. They're still warm-blooded, but they lay eggs. Okay, they don't give birth to live young in the same way that we do. They lay eggs that has been fertilized, and then the animal grows a bit inside the egg before coming out. Let's have a look at trying to draw a bird. Oh, this is even worse than my sheep. I'm sorry, guys. That was supposed to be a bird. I don't know what type of bird. Okay. Then we move on to reptiles. These start to look a wee bit different, okay? So reptiles are like lizards and snakes, okay? They're not warm-blooded. They have cold blood, which is why we normally find them in hot places, like in deserts and jungles and things, because they need to warm up and warm up their blood, because their body doesn't do it for them. Okay? Then they don't tend to have fur or feathers, they have scales, okay? And they also lay eggs like the birds do, okay? So I'm gonna now, we'll just have a little snake as our drawing of a reptile. Okay. Amphibians, they're a wee bit strange. They're a bit of a crossover, really, okay? So amphibians are things like frogs and toads, and amphibians have something really special, okay? They tend to live sort of in the water and on the land, okay? They tend to have soft, quite wet, slimy skin, and they're cold-blooded as well. They need to heat up in the sun or in light to keep themselves going. Okay, I really cannot draw a frog. Let's pretend that's a frog, not some sort of freaky, horrific spider. And then last, brings us on to the fish. We all know about these. They don't have fur, they don't have hair, they've got scales, okay? They live underwater, they breathe water, they don't breathe the air like we do. Their skin is wet and slimy, and they often lay eggs and things like that as well. And then we're going to do a very simple drawing of a fish, okay? So, if we zoom back out and look at what we've done so far, it does look pretty complicated, but it is quite simple if we follow it, okay? So, organisms are any living thing, okay? So everything that's alive is an organism of some sort, okay? And then we split them up, okay? So we have animals and then we have plants, okay? Then, because not all animals are like each other, we split those up more. So we talk about vertebrates, they have a backbone, and invertebrates, they have no backbone, okay? And then, because not all vertebrates are like each other, we have to get a little bit more detailed, and we split the vertebrates up into these 5 groups: mammals, birds, reptiles, amphibians, and fish. We will talk more about some things these groups do and some examples of these different types of groups, but that's what I want you to go away now and do as part of your homework, is research these little groups, fill in some of the blanks I've left in the PowerPoint for you, and find out about some animals. How are they different to amphibians? What's the difference between fish and reptiles? Okay, so I hope that was understandable and my drawings weren't too horrific for you. Thanks for listening. Goodbye.